want you back. I want.
Hello everyone, welcome to Crypto Insight UK's first ever podcast episode, The Great Reveal with Raoul Pal, my investing hero. So just to give you a bit of an introduction and a background to Raoul, I'm going to let him speak for himself in a second, but just from what I know and what I think of him. He's a CEO and founder of Global Macro Investor and Real Vision Group. I'll give you the Twitter handles to those in the description below. He is ex-head of GLG Global Macro Investing in London and ex-co-head of hedge fund sales and equity derivatives at Goldman Sachs in Europe. He's one of the few people to predict the 2008 housing market crash. And in November, and this is something that really interests me, he liquidated either all of his assets or 95% to all of his assets into Bitcoin. And that was one of the things that started me onto my investing journey. He's my inspiration when it comes to cryptocurrency because he's not only really intelligent, but he presents himself as someone that I would like to spend time with outside of anything investing-wise. So without further ado, Raoul, if you'd like to introduce yourself. I don't know if I've lived up to the expectation of an introduction there.
Yeah, I think you've given everything, you know, and I think, you know, what's great is you and I share a passion for crypto and the opportunities that offers people, the investment opportunities, and it's a whole world, you know, in a world that's pretty dark in many respects. This is a world of optimism because it solves problems, yeah, and creates opportunities, and you know, it's amazing, right?
Yeah, definitely, and accessible by all, which is also another amazing feature. So just to start us off, can you tell us a bit about your background, where you grew up, what sort of life path you took? Just 60 seconds to a minute of yourself.
Yeah, I was born in Birmingham in the UK. My father was from India. My mother was from Holland. They met on a blind date in Birmingham. I kind of grew up Birmingham, Liverpool shortly, and then I lived outside in Berkshire, between Windsor and Maidenhead, and grew up there. And then lived in India for a year. Got into I went to university in Plymouth. It was the only place that would accept me, literally the only place. Really? After failing my A-levels once, because I discovered cars and girls and pubs. And so I scraped through. I got out with a decent 2-1 in the end in economics and law. Mm-hmm. And then I graduated in the middle of a recession. And I remember I was at my parents' house speaking to a friend of theirs. And he's like, well, Raoul, what are you going to do now you graduated? I said, well, there's no jobs around. He said, but what area are you going to go into? I said, well, I'm kind of thinking about marketing because my dad was in marketing, or finance because, you know, we'd just gone through the Wall Street crash and the junk bond boom and the stock market bubble and all this stuff from the late 80s. And, you know, everyone was driving Porsches and all of this stuff. And it looked really glamorous. And I said to the guy, so I'm thinking about these two. What do you think? He goes, well, it's pretty simple to me. He goes, you can go and work for a great marketing company like Mars and they'll give you free Mars bars. Or you can go and work for a bank and they'll give you free money. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So then I've now got by that stage, I had a drawer of maybe 200 rejection letters from everybody. Yeah. But I eventually got in via a company called Dow Jones Telerate, which is like Bloomberg, provide pricing and charting and stuff. Got in as a graduate trainee and then managed to talk my way into an investment bank and then worked in investment banking for, you know, some of the world's leading firms such as Goldman Sachs. You know, I've still got the rejection letter from Goldman Sachs when I left university, right? They didn't want me. I ended up working for a bunch of firms that rejected me the first time around, and then ran a hedge fund, which was amazing, and then moved to the Mediterranean coast of Spain, where I started writing macroeconomic research called the Global Macro Investor, which is read by the world's biggest hedge funds, family offices, sovereign wealth funds, governments, you name it. I've been doing that for 17 years, and I was in Europe over the time of the financial crisis, which I, you know, pretty much saw coming. I was at the epicenter of. A lot of my clients were the people in the film The Big Short, you know, so I was very much at the center of it.
One of my favorite films.
Then I was there when Europe almost fell apart in 2012. And that ended up making me realize two things. One is that there was two levels of information. There was us at the epicenter, or the elites, and there was everybody else. And I'm like, this is not right. The Occupy Wall Street movement had started, the Indignados in Spain had started, and I realized that the social mood had changed forever, that people had felt let down. and I should do something about it. So in the end, I ended up deciding to start Real Vision, which is basically a media platform, mainly video, that concentrates on democratizing the very best financial intelligence. So to give people access to the kind of information that only the world's most elite hedge funds get, to level the playing field. And that's a trend that we got dead right and has been growing everywhere across the world. And that's great. And the other thing that happened on that journey is I realized how broken the financial system was. And I wanted to go and solve that too. And I looked at setting up the world's safest bank with a bunch of people, but I ended up being shown Bitcoin back in 2012. And that was my start of my crypto journey too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I was just going to mention, obviously, I could tell even when you were saying that you spent some time in Liverpool that you weren't brought up there because the accent wasn't there. But then going on to Real Vision, I've actually subscribed to your cryptocurrency newsletter, and it's free, guys. If you want to go check that out, again, I will put that in the description. So we're going to get into a big news headline today. I'm going to ask Raoul for his views on what's going on in the world. Specifically regarding El Salvador and now having Bitcoin as legal tender, and what he thinks, how he thinks that will affect the economy, not just in El Salvador, but more broadly around South America and also around the world. What sort of reaction do you think we'll have going forward from that, if any? I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so countries in Latin America, I've been flagging this for a while. I figured it was going to be somebody in Latin America. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be Costa Rica or whether it was going to be Panama, but it ended up being El Salvador. What historically the problem is they've had a series of bad governments, tons of corruption, and they tend to not have enough exports to be able to drive their economy, so their currencies keep collapsing. And that's basically robbing the wealth of the people. So then they try and dollarize, so they try and hold dollars as well. But the problem is these countries don't get access to enough dollars. So it becomes really hard to have access to money and the kind of things that we all take for granted. So this idea behind having Bitcoin, the other thing that they do is they tend to work in the United States or elsewhere and send money home to their parents, remittances.
Yeah.
And that's a very important source of capital for these countries. But somebody takes like 10% out of the middle or 20% out of the middle. So Panama have kind of realized that maybe offering Bitcoin as part of the financial system means that people can save in it. So that protects them from their own currency or the dollar going up or down. It allows them to transfer money amongst each other and not have a highly developed banking system, because you kind of solve it overnight. Because with something like Strike, which they're going to be using, I can transfer $1 to a person. It just uses Bitcoin as the transmission mechanism. So it means you end up with a digital banking system pretty fast. And that gets rid of all the middlemen and the costs and the need to build out an expensive banking system. So there's a bunch of things that I think are really useful. El Salvador's small, but it's the start. And we saw people in the Brazilian parliament, Argentina, Panama, Paraguay, Mexico, all looking at the same thing, because they're all plagued by these issues.
Sure. So yeah, that was something I wanted to touch on, was obviously the cross-border payments section of that. Being a big XRP follower, I wanted to know what you thought that would do to go against CBDCs in a way. Obviously, what I pictured in my head is maybe a microclimate of Bitcoin around South America, should that start to come into fruition like that. And then, but obviously then we're going to have America trying to race to keep the dollar as a global reserve currency. And I'm trying to relate all this to the race that China are kind of winning in regards to CBDCs. So I don't really think I've asked this very well, but I want to know what you think America's reaction will be to this Bitcoinization if it comes from Latin America first. I understand it won't massively affect their economy, definitely not overnight, but I want to know if you think there'll be any counter reaction to that.
I mean, they're not abandoning the dollar. What they're basically doing is adopting this as a banking and savings system.
Sure.
So I don't think the US has anything to fear in this. How do the central bank digital currencies fit in? Well, we don't know. We don't know because the US would still, or Europe or China or the UK, still control who gets the money through the CBDC. In this case, it's a non-bank controlled layer, so people can't get in the way. So they can't say, we're blocking Salvadorians from sending money home, right? Which is what we do to China, and we do to Russia, we do to Iran, we do to Venezuela. So it kind of does change that game. And XRP, they're also working on this solution too. And I think they're all the same thing, meaning they will all exist together because, you know, it's a multi-project world out there, and all of these systems will end up being interoperable. So maybe some money that starts in one country starts using XRP rails, but ends up using Bitcoin rails and then CBDC rails, and we won't even notice. Because in the end, we don't know. I don't know what computer you're using, what Wi-Fi you're using, what internet type you're using, what modem you're using, what software, nothing, right?
Of course.
I just connect and I'm talking to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what money's going to be like.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to get on to the next topic then. So we've kind of answered this already. I was talking about how you first got into crypto and whether your views on your portfolio diversification, if you can talk about this, are still the same. So from what I've already read about you, you were mainly, if not 100% Bitcoin. Are you still that pro-Bitcoin? Has anything changed for you?
Yeah, I've changed a lot since then. So, you know, you heard my crypto story. So I invested, first time was 2012. It went up 100% in a month. And I was like, holy shit. And I sold it. Then I bought some again in 2013. And I held that through all the way to 2017. And then I sold out too early into the bull market because there was having these Bitcoin forks going on. I'm like, I don't understand any of this. I'm out. I thought, you know, could this whole thing fail? Could it all move to a different chain? I don't know.
Yeah, Bitcoin Cash nearly overtook at one point, didn't it?
That's right.
Very close, yeah.
And I'm like, no, I don't know. It's beyond my skill set. And then I was out. I've been following the space for a while, and I was out of it until 2019, when a good friend of mine, Dan Tapiero, who you can see, there's some great interviews on our YouTube channel or on Real Vision, basically persuaded me all over again. Hey, listen, Raoul, it's time to get back in again. So I started doing the work on it again. And then the point came, I always knew that the macro world of investing with too much debt and these aging demographics and all the problems in the financial system, the next recession, they were going to meet crypto and they were going to become the same thing because crypto was the solution and this was the problem. And so as soon as the recession came, so crypto collapsed, and I'm like, okay, this is the signal. This is the chance to get in because the most likely outcome is this explodes higher. So I started buying back in March last year, and I was all Bitcoin. I was up until maybe June, July, I was still investing in other stuff. And then I said, look, this is the single best opportunity we're ever going to be given in our lives. And I'm going all in. So every single penny of cash that I had, I put into Bitcoin. I mean, 100% of everything I had and anything I earned that was excess cash, I put into this. So this was not a small bet. This was like, fuck it, I'm doing it.
Selling your bed.
Because, you know, everything I'd ever studied about, you know, the macro and crypto itself, this was the time. If it was going to happen, now was it. And the chart pattern was great. So I then, by about September, I started realizing that if you ever talk about anything not Bitcoin, you get attacked on Twitter, where I've got quite a big presence. And I'm like, huh, why is that? So I started kind of observing that, and I could see that there was a feeling of threat because these are built around network effects, and you're trying to stop anybody else eating away from your network, even though the reality is the whole space is growing and it's not Bitcoin, but there was this prevailing narrative. So that got me starting to think, and I started looking at the charts of Ethereum thinking, Ethereum's going to outperform Bitcoin. So I start digging in. I usually start with a chart. I see that chart and go, okay, I'm going to do some work on Ethereum. So I start doing some work on Ethereum, and I figured out that Ethereum followed the Metcalfe's law adoption model. And as far as I knew, nobody had done this work before, or not knowingly. I hadn't seen a lot of it with Ethereum. I'd seen it in Bitcoin, and figured out that they looked identical, that it's just all about network adoption. And then I started moving into Ethereum and eventually realized that I think Ethereum has a much faster network adoption than Bitcoin. There's more developers, there's more apps, there's more volume of people using it, even the volumes of it. So I started overweighting Ethereum. Then I wanted to get exposure to, because you get something called alt season, which is anything other than Bitcoin tends to outperform in the teeth of a bull market. So I thought, okay, I want exposure to that, but I have no idea what to buy. So I just took an equally weighted basket of 10 different large protocols, exchanges, DeFi, broad mix, and just blindly put those on without, no things. I'd also written about XRP quite a lot as well, because I also saw back in December with the news flow and the hatred around XRP from Bitcoin maximalists that I could sense an opportunity in that too. And I figured that the probability of them winning the lawsuit was going to be reasonably high with some sort of fine and settlement, and that therefore the risk reward was pretty explosive to the upside. So I did a bit of that as well, which I don't own currently any right now. And then I started layering in more macro bets on where I thought the space was going. So trying to be more intelligent than just a basket. I've still kept the basket. And my bets are moving towards the metaverse and social tokens, community tokens, which I think are going to be hugely disruptive business model. And I think the metaverse is where everything is going. So that's kind of how I played it. So I'm now roughly 25% Bitcoin, 55% Ethereum, and 20% in all the other stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. So you got yourself some NFTs that people can go around and watch in augmented reality and virtual reality when we get there then, yeah? And you're going to charge people for the big ones. That's you, isn't it? I can see that painting you've got in the background there is probably, you probably got
that is an NFT.
Is it actually?
It's actually an NFT that the Real Vision bot on Twitter made. He made a limited run of 5 or 10 of them, and I got given the first one and I printed it off.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Okay, so from there, we're going in a bit of a different direction, I guess. This is going to be a more personal question. So what experiences have you learned from the most in your life? And I want to know one positive and one negative. So what things have happened to you that you've either grown the most from or taken the most from?
The question is the answer to that question, without question, is travel.
Okay.
Travel changed your life. And the more uncomfortable the travel is, the more you learn. And the more experienced and more broad you are, and more balanced you are, and the more understanding you are. There's a world of comfort zone, and there's the world that lies outside of the comfort zone. That bit outside the comfort zone is where all the magic happens. The comfort zone, nothing happens. You go about your daily routine. So having traveled, I've traveled to ridiculous places, having ridiculous adventures. I've driven from Budapest in Hungary down to Mali in Central Africa in a rally, across the Sahara, the Alps, the Rift Mountains, all of this stuff, and the Sahel twice, delivering humanitarian aid to villages in Mali.
Wow.
I've trekked across the Sinai Desert. I've driven across the Sahara, over the Arabian Desert, across the Sahara. I've climbed the Himalayas. I've dived with 1,000 sharks at a dive in the Galapagos, done all of this stuff. But what you meet is, A, the beauty of the world, and it makes you truly appreciative of what actually matters. And secondly, you learn about other people.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I did have a question about traveling, so I will ask that. I'll tie that in now and just say, I don't know if there is one specific answer, because I've travelled a bit, not as much as you, but if I was to get asked this, I wouldn't know how to answer specifically. But where's your favourite memory from travelling? Do you have one specific memory that stands above all else?
It's probably breaking down in the middle of the Sahara Desert with a mate and being rescued by Bedouin guys who managed to fix this Land Cruiser with like 2 twigs and a bit of sticky back plastic. And just that whole ridiculousness of the situation and the vast emptiness of the desert. It's just priceless. I just love stuff like that.
So how did they just roll up on you then? They just were taking a stroll?
They're Bedouin. They just kind of figure out there's somebody probably there, and they just turn up on a camel and like, how can I help? It's amazing. I mean, desert people are amazing people.
How can I help? That's awesome. Okay, sweet. So I know this is a bit all over the place. So let's go for, what is your next career goal? Do you have a specific life goal? What do you want to achieve next?
For me, there's 2 levels of achievement. One is, what is the actual game you're playing? Mm-hmm. The actual game you're playing is quality of life. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't require money. It requires attitude. It requires thinking, what are the things that are important to you? You know, I live between Grand Cayman and Little Cayman here in the Caribbean. And there's a bunch of people who live on Little Cayman, up to 140 people, who don't have any money really, but they live on a deserted Caribbean island where everybody knows everybody. There's no crime and nobody cares how weird you are. You know, it's not a fancy island of billionaires. It's just a really simple place. And they found their place in the world. And that's by being true to themselves. Mm. So I think quality of life is what I pursue. And in terms of career goals, I'd lived in Spain for 10 years in this beach town, writing research, and I felt like I was losing touch with what was going on in the world because everybody in the beach town in Spain was in the restaurant business or the tourism business or the property business. And I thought, there's a lot going on out in the world and I need to be part of it. Mm. So starting Real Vision was part of that journey. And, you know, I've been working a whole bunch of things, but really it seems to have culminated with this kind of crossover between crypto and communicating to people and creating a community around both Real Vision, myself, and what I can do to help people. That's probably really what I'm trying to get to, is get to the end state that I see in my head. I'm a guy who lives in the future. I always try and work towards this end goal. And it's to make the most of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, personally, I share quite similar goals to you in that sense. I've never really been someone who's chased a career for better or worse, depending on who you speak to in my family. If you speak to my dad, he'd always say things like, oh, if I buckled down, I'd be here, I'd be here, I'd be here. And it's just, for me, the way I see the world is I just want to explore. I'm very similar to you in that way. I've been to a few places. I've worked with SEN children in America, in Wisconsin that was. I've been to South America traveling. I worked ski season in the Alps. I've been to Australia. So I have tried to travel. It's just difficult with the cash. So I'm 28 years old. I made some sacrifices to do that. I live in my mum's attic.
You need to travel to cheaper countries. That's the thing.
Asia's next on my list, but I do want to start with Japan. So I went to the Olympics in Rio, and I wanted to go to the Japanese Olympics, obviously, in Tokyo. But they are cancelled now, obviously, with Corona. So it kind of put me back a bit. And that put me into a bit of a weird place mentally. I kind of touched on this before we got into this podcast. Put me into a strange place where I wasn't myself, because my medicine is life. Like, I love to travel. And I think that what this has made me realise is I very much did, even though I pretended I didn't care, I very much cared about what people thought about me. And one of the things from watching your podcast, I don't know how, from watching your interviews, especially the one with Anthony Pompliano about Bitcoin, I realised that things I like cryptocurrency, I was a geek. Well, I'm very sporty, but I hid my geeky side at school. I'd say I was quite well accepted at school. I played football for the school team, etc. But I hid the side of me that I actually really enjoyed, which was gaming, computers, being a bit of a geek. And then when I heard about this, and that actually now you can make serious amounts of money from it, because I wasn't that financially incentivized before, I was like, okay, well, I actually know quite a lot about this already, and no one I know knows anything about it. I worked in a cafe deli in 2016-17, and I was trying to speak to my friend who was lovely, bless her, Chloe. She had no idea what I was talking about, and all I wanted to talk about was Bitcoin. And she was like, can you just stop, because I don't have a clue what you're on about. So when I realised that people now actually want to know about it, I was like, okay, awesome. And obviously 28 years old, TikTok's a bit of a strange thing for my social circle. And I started making TikTok videos, and people like laughed at me a little bit, I guess, to start with. But I had, from your interviews, I had some confidence to go and do that. Started making TikToks, and now we are where we are. You're here on my podcast, which is absolutely awesome, so thank you for that. But what I'm trying to get to is I wanted to do something that I enjoyed, but also I can travel anywhere and make TikToks. That was another thing that really drew me to it. And I started to grow. Actually, about 2 months ago, I had about 10,000 followers, and I got offered the ideal career. Out of nowhere, Loughborough University emailed me and asked me if I wanted to become an esports lecturer. And I don't know how they knew. They just must have followed me on Instagram. I did a charity stream in January, raised £1,000 by playing Call of Duty. And they must have found me through that, and that's how they said they contacted me, and they offered me the job within a week. And everyone in my life was like, take the job. Don't be stupid, take the job. It's your dream career. And I was like, no, I just think this is just a time where I need to just have a go, and if I fail, I fail. But I just didn't think I would, and I still don't think I will. And everything that's happening now is just amazing, and it just comes from believing in yourself. And that's one of the things I wanted to get across. One, that I found something that I wanted to do and could do it anywhere. And the second one is believing in yourself. And that came from your podcast and your interviews specifically, because I watched basically everything that you've put out, as I said.
And one of the key things to realize is we're all just trying to figure it out. And people are just different parts of their journey of figuring it out. And nobody knows everything. And once you realize that, it gives you confidence to say, well, this is how I see it. As long as you never speak in terms of truths, like this is how it is. But it's, well, I see it this way, and this is how I'm thinking through this. A, you get iterative feedback from people that teaches you more as you go. But secondly, it means you're not scared of being wrong. And the moment that gives you confidence is the moment you realize that everybody is equally valid in their perspectives, and the more perspectives that you get back to you, and somebody goes, actually, you're wrong about that because of this, you either strengthen your argument, say, actually, no, maybe I'm right, or you say, yeah, you're right, I've just learned from that, and that's brilliant. So a lot of people think they should have a fear about not knowing stuff, and I think the fear is not being inquisitive. If you're not inquisitive, then you're definitely going to fail. If you're inquisitive, you can take on the world.
Learning's exciting at the end of the day. So I think that's definitely something I live by that sort of mentality. So we're going to move on to another question here. So let's go for, who was your biggest idol growing up? Did you have someone who you were like, I want to be like them, or they really inspired me to change? Well, my
biggest idol as a kid, there's a great story around.
Okay.
And that was Jacques Cousteau, the famous French guy who invented the aqualung, the scuba tank.
Oh, okay.
And he created the world's first nature programs about the underwater world. And he traveled the world in this boat called the Calypso. And he was like one of the most famous people in the world. And everybody wanted to be him. He was on this boat with this group of people, and they would go to the bottom of the sea and film these amazing reefs, and nobody had ever seen this before in the world.
Okay.
So it was like, oh my God, there's a whole new world out there. And I was maybe 8 years old maybe. And there used to be a show in the UK called Jim Will Fix It. A guy called Jimmy Savile who ended up being a paedophile. But aside from that, the show was basically, you would write to Jimmy and say, I'd like to meet Michael Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton, whatever it is, and you get to meet him, and he enabled your dreams to come true. So I went to my dad, me and a friend, next door neighbor, went to our parents and said, we want to write to Jim Will Fix It. And they said, this was genius. Probably the best thing my dad ever did. He's like, well, what do you want to do? And the other guy, Simon, he said, I want to write to Charles Boeing of the Boeing family to ask them about their new jumbo jet. And I said, I want to write to Jacques Cousteau. So they said, well, do it yourself. It so happens that the other guy managed to get the Boeing headquarters address and wrote a letter off. Dad said, you know what? I think one of our friends is good friends with Jacques Cousteau, by chance. So I got his address. So I wrote off as well a letter. A week later, the friend of mine got a model Boeing of their new plane and this letter signed by, you know, whoever it was. And I was like, I was gutted. And I got nothing. I'm like, my dreams are shattered. And then 6 months later, I get a big thing like this from the Oceanographic Institute of Monte Carlo. And so I open it up, and it's a handwritten letter from Jacques Cousteau.
No way.
Who said, I'm sorry, I didn't reply to your letter. I've just got back to the Institute, and I have been searching for the lost city of Atlantis on the Calypso. Here's a signed picture of all of us on the Calypso, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, wow. Oh my God, wow. The best thing ever.
Have you still got that then?
No. So I then hid it, as kids do, in my encyclopedias, which, and then my mother gave them away to somebody else.
Oh no!
And I lost it. So I would tell this story because it's always a nice story. And a friend of mine had heard the story like 17 times over wine before, and she's like, she was the editor at large of Hello magazine, which is this big celebrity magazine. So she comes to see me one time and goes, I've got something for you. So what's that? She goes, this is Jean-Michel Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau's son, who's also a marine conservationist. Here's his autograph and a little note from him because he heard about the story of his dad, that you lost the whole thing. So here it is. I've got that signed on the wall in the house in Little Cayman.
And what does that one say? Don't lose this one.
Yeah, so it's framed and it's in a safe place.
That's awesome. That's actually an amazing story.
But it's a story about what you're capable of doing yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And having the confidence to try something.
For sure. And almost that if it doesn't work out first time doesn't mean it's not going to work out further down the line, which is another
exactly right.
Awesome thing. Because, well,
even if it didn't work out, you still have a good story.
Yeah, exactly. It's awesome that your friend got something from Bowen as well. That just makes it a bit like surreal, doesn't it, in a way? So I said to my friend, actually, because he knew how many of your videos that I watched back in December, I was like, oh, you're never going to guess who I've got on my podcast. And he's going up, just guessing at people like who we kind of know. And I was like, no, I've got Raoul Pal to come and talk. He's like, no way. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how it's happening. I feel a bit like your Jacques Cousteau moment. Just having you, when you came into the chat, I was like, oh my goodness, he's actually here. Here he is.
Well, I also believe in just good karma. You know, you do good things for people, good things come back.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I've got about 2 more questions, and then I've got like a little speed round of just silly questions like Pepsi or Coke sort of thing that I want to just go through with you. Okay. So 2 more questions are, one would be, and this is actually what my friend asked me to ask you. If you had 20,000...
What's his name?
His name's Pav.
Pav?
Yeah, Pav and Deep.
Okay.
He said, if you had £20,000 at 20 years old, what would you do with it investment-wise? How would you invest it? Would you diversify it, and where would you put it?
No, I wouldn't diversify it because you can take all the risks in the world when you're young. Because if you lose it, you can rebuild your savings pretty quick. The question is what risk to take. My advice would be to what you're doing, start your own business. If you can invest £20,000 in yourself, it'll be the best investment you ever make. It's not the get-rich-quick scheme, but it's the get-rich-forever scheme, or at least be able to support yourself in the lifestyle that I talked about before. So that is the single best investment you could do with your £20,000.
Awesome.
You know, and I think that's, if you've got a job and a career and you don't want to be entrepreneurial, you want to do something else, fine. Then you can invest in stuff like crypto, which is very future-driven. And technology investing, I think, is also of that ilk. But really, do something yourself. because even if you fail, you'll have learned a priceless lesson, and it will cost you 20 grand to learn how to fail. And learning how to fail is a key part in learning how to win.
All right, that's a cool answer, because if I could develop on that quickly, well, we are both entrepreneurial, me and Pav. I have a small business where I import eco products from China and supply retailers in the UK, but Pav has a fabric printing business, and he actually printed that for me free of charge. So he asked that more as because we're at a stage where we're entrepreneurial, have enough capital to make an investment, but just not to make a big investment. So that was his question, and I think you answered it with crypto, which is probably what he'd like to hear, aside from having a company.
Yeah, and then within crypto, how do I think about it? Look, the answer is we don't know over an extended period of time what other things are going to happen in crypto. So either you kind of keep a basket, you either start with Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is where everybody starts, and then do what I do. You just buy a basket of stuff, and as some things don't perform over time, you maybe switch them out for something that's maybe growing. So use the top 30 by market cap and just play in that sphere, try and do some work, and over time you'll get to learn what you're doing and which tokens are interesting and which ones maybe aren't. That's the only way.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Well, we spend a lot of time looking into cryptos, so my portfolio is not as diverse as it used to be. I'm mainly XRP holding now,
right?
As most of my followers know. I probably made about, this is me personally, he sort of follows my investment strategies. I was into Ethereum as well as Solana. What else was I into?
Should have kept hold of Solana. That's been like a rocket ship.
Yeah, I actually cashed out at like $42, so it's about that now. So it wasn't too. I made about 300-400% on each of them, and then cycled that into XRP. A lot of it still when XRP was at 40 cent, and then just slowly like drip feeding in, because I just think the return on investment for me is something that I can't really miss out on, because I do so much research into it, the fundamentals and everything as well. So I don't know, I'd kick myself if it started to take off. We got the catalyst of the lawsuit, etc., and I don't want to go on about it, because all my followers just hear me talk about this all the time anyway. I want to pick your brains, that's what I'm here for. One question about emerging markets. I don't have any real investment tools, and I wondered if there was any way to invest into emerging markets, or how you go about. So emerging markets, when we talked, or from my understanding of what you've said in the past, I may be completely off ball here. Once we get more of a stable currency for places like, just for example, Zimbabwe with their Zimbabwean dollar against the USD, I could see them becoming more, and India especially, some places like that, becoming bigger powerhouses. Like, how would you go about getting any investments there? I don't really understand.
So the story of emerging markets is generally they're younger, they have less debt. They're the opposite of the West. The West is like old populations full of boomers, all going into retirement. That slows down, massive debts, massive government debts. The emerging market world is the opposite. It's like what the world used to be when the boomers were 30 years old. And things were cheap, and there was no debts, and opportunity was everywhere.
And you're in the 80s having a great time.
Yeah, and that's what they got given to them, and you guys didn't get that. You got all-time record valuation stock markets. You know, when the moment everybody hits 30 and they start investing, they're like, really? What are you left with? Expensive property, expensive equities. Luckily, you got given crypto, so that was amazing. But emerging markets are very, very cheap versus developed markets, and that doesn't always happen that way. There's a period of time where they massively outperform and become more expensive because they offer higher growth. So I think that period's coming. I don't know for UK investors what the way to do it is. US investors have an ETF called the EEM, which is the Emerging Markets ETF. It's pretty straightforward. But you know, there's markets like India, which are just phenomenal because they've got a digital revolution going on, complete digitalization of the economy. With this, the average population age in India is like 26. I mean, the younger than you is the average. And there's 1.3 billion of them. And they're producing kind of more engineers and more doctors than pretty much any nation on earth.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's a no-brainer. It's just a no-brainer for long-term asset allocation.
For sure. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So if you could get access to things there, what would you buy? Invest into land companies? What?
No, I would just buy the index. Don't
Just
try
the
and be
index.
smart. Yeah,
Sure.
over time you'll figure out what are the best investments because maybe it's Indian tech companies,
Yeah.
but they're not easy to access. But if you can just get a fund that gives you India exposure as a start, I think India, the next 15 years probably belongs to India. So if there's the one single one or an emerging market like index, which gives you a broad exposure, but if I couldn't do that, India and maybe a bit of China, those two together, you'll be dead fine.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. And right, so just a bit of fun now, just to finish off. We'll just go through some quick fire questions, and we'll start with Pepsi or Coke.
Coke.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Favorite rum?
Favorite room?
Rum. I know you're a rum drinker, as in
Oh, rum.
rum. Yeah.
It's your Leicester accent.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Clement from Martinique.
Okay, never heard of that. Sounds nice. Favorite sport?
I'm not much of a sports person. I'm going to go with scuba diving.
Oh,
It's not much of a sport, but
good choice. Good choice. Lucky number?
5.
5. Okay. Favorite hobby other than investing in rum?
Traveling and music and nature. Those three altogether are the answer to life. Travel, music, and nature.
Okay, so going along that then, favorite song?
Oh, come on. That's impossible. That is impossible.
Favorite instrument? What's your favorite instrument?
I can't play instruments, but my alternative me is clearly I'm an excellent guitar player.
Oh, guitar. Okay. It's piano for me. I tried to learn piano. Awful.
I'm not that cultured. I'm just, I got the wristbands. I just don't have the guitar.
You've got the tan though. Favorite film?
Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say adventure or relaxation, but I already know that one now. And then, do you believe in aliens? Was one that someone wanted me to ask you.
I don't not believe in aliens.
Okay, good answer. And do you have any jokes?
Whenever you ask somebody on the spot, it's like, damn, I can't now think of any jokes. The answer is yes, I do have jokes, but I can't remember them. So I'm not going to give you one.
Right, I'll give you one of mine then. You ready?
Okay.
What does a pirate say on his 80th birthday? I'm 80. Thought you'd like that because
awful.
Rum vibes,
That's awful.
So anyway, after that tumbleweed, I'd just like to say thank you very much for coming onto my podcast. I'd like to finish by saying, if you ever see an opportunity where you need some extra capital, you want to go 50-50 with someone, hit me up. Could probably bring you about £5, but we'll see what I can do. Thank you very much for being on here. Guys, if you don't already follow Raoul on Twitter, his Twitter is @Raoul, which is RAOULGMI. And if you don't already follow Real Vision, I know that most of my followers are crypto, and they do a free crypto newsletter, and they do interviews on there, and that's completely free, and you can have a look on @RealVision on Twitter or realvision.com for the website. Is there anything you'd like to ask me or say before?
No, I mean, look, if you're interested in crypto, we built a whole video channel interviewing, literally everybody of every protocol you want to find out about. Anything you want to know, it's all there and it's free. We made it free purposefully for the point that you're trying to do as well, is we want to educate as many people as possible. So go to realvision.com/crypto or just look for the crypto bit at the top. It costs you an email. You get the newsletter every week that kind of summarizes everything that's gone on, called The Distillery. But also, there's a library of every piece of information you could ever imagine. So just go there and use it.
Sure. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, please follow him. He's really good. He's the most intelligent guy that I've ever watched, because not only can he hold a conversation with anybody, master their intelligence, but he can also bring that conversation down to whatever intelligence that he's speaking to, which is a very great trait to have as a person, and what inspired me to want to get him onto my podcast. So that's it. Thank you very much. I'm not going to put any more into my podcast now. So thank you.
Well, good luck with your podcast. I've had the honour of doing the first one. I hope it grows into something massive.
I think I'll probably set the bar a bit high to try and get anybody else on. But yeah, I really appreciate that. And I know that you're looking for a blogger, and I know that you're trying to tout me. It's all right, Raoul. No, but in all seriousness, if you ever do need any crypto questions or want to ask anyone anything, I'm not saying I'll definitely know, but I do know a little bit more than what we've talked about here. And I can find that I know quite a lot of people who, well, we all know quite a lot about crypto, well, ish, obviously relative. So yeah, if you need a second opinion or anything, always just don't be.
Yeah, I might hit you up on XRP at some point.
Yeah, okay. I'll get you. I'll give you a whole lowdown. I'll tell you what. I'll write you a newsletter and a blog about everything going on with XRP, or just follow my TikTok. That'd be the best way.
My wife's a TikTok fanatic. I don't use it.
You're gonna hear me everywhere. You're like, oh, it's that blooming kid again. Right. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Honestly, I'm very starstruck. I still don't really believe that this is happening, and I hope that went all right. I felt a bit like I was a bit all over the place, but I was very excited to talk to you.
I thought it was great.
Okay. Well, thank you for all your time, and thank you for fitting me into your day.
Yeah. Not at all.
Yeah, have a great day, and I'd love to speak to you soon. Just let me know, as I said, if you need anything. Obviously, I can't help you the way you can help me because I don't have your experience.
You never know.
And I'll have a look at your NFTs one day when I'm an XRP millionaire.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.